Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the D-Shift podcast. And we have, as those of you who've been listening for a while, you know, we have a collection of people that come in different areas, different expertise. And today I am really, really excited to talk to my guest. Cherie Morris is just this fantastic woman that I met in a group that I belong to that I've referenced on this podcast before, which is Divorce Girls Smiling. It's a fantastic resource for people. But Cherie herself is, I'm going to read this so I don't mess it up. Used to be a lawyer, right? Or
that's right.
Still is a lawyer though, right? Or no?
I'm not practicing law, but I trained and practiced for a very long time.
Yeah, it's like that once a lawyer, always a lawyer kind of thing, right? You still got the law thing going. So Cherie is a lawyer that is now a full-time co-parenting and blended family coach, supporting individuals and co-parents as they navigate the responsibilities of this very new and very different aspect of life. Her goal is to help people understand that taking responsibility of themselves means that we do better taking care of others too. And unhooking from our former partners helps us to do better in every single way. And I just love the message and I love what you do. So, and I know you do a couple of other things too that we hadn't really had that's not in your bio there, but you actually do something called couples coaching. So let's start with, first of all, Cherie, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Mardi, it's my privilege to be here with you today.
Oh, no, it's my privilege to have you here. So tell us a little bit about what got you into this very specific area of supporting families and people going through the divorce process.
So what I noticed when I was practicing as a lawyer was you can solve people's legal problems. I could, not always, but hopefully most of the time. And still on the other side of it, they weren't happy. So the shift I experienced was when I went through my own divorce and noticed the ways in which families were not supported, especially the children and even the adults. And there needed to be some support for that in a process, which is what I do in my couples coaching work that facilitates de-escalation of the individual and the family system. So that's how I started doing what I'm doing. And part of that includes the co-parenting piece, but there is this broader couples coaching component, which I think is pretty impactful to the family system in divorce.
Oh, yeah. I think anytime that you can get, whether couples stay together or choose to divorce, and I think I'm speaking for you, but correct me if maybe I should. I'm going to speak for myself and then let you give what you feel. I always feel if there's any way that a relationship can be saved and it's going to continue to work for both parties and the kids, then every effort should be made to do that. But not every relationship should continue. I mean, it's not healthy for one or both of the people. It's not even healthy for the kids when they're in these kind of situations where the parents aren't able to be civil and respectful and maybe don't even care about each other anymore. That's a tough place for kids. So talk a little bit about what you do. And I'm going to let you go whatever direction you want to go with this. Pretty open-ended question there.
Great. Well, what I would say is the way I work, and let me just describe the process to you. The way I work when I'm doing couples coaching is usually one person reaches out to me and they say either I'm thinking about divorce, we're in the middle of a divorce, or we have post-divorce complications. And I say, hey, look, I actually work with the couple. I either as a co-parent, either as an intimate partner or a former intimate partner now going through the process. Where are you in this? And will your spouse show up? And if they will, I have a separate discovery Zoom with them as well. I want to know that they hear what I do and understand it, and there's a good intersection. They're buying into the process. Once both people do, we can take it any direction they need, but primarily I spend the first hour with each of them individually. I do want to hear their story. We're not going to get stuck in their story, but we're going to use it as a jumping off point. And I specifically in that first hour with each of them don't include their partner or spouse because they don't need to hear again the complaints about the partner. They know them, they hear them, and we don't need to reinforce them in that initial meeting. So we spend that hour, I hear what's going on for them. And then in a third hour, we create what I call an agenda for success. So if they're deciding, can we make this marriage work? Have they done specifically the therapy to do that? Have they used coaching tools to do that? Then we're talking about that in a really specific way. And it's a safe container because I'm there to facilitate that discussion. I'm not controlling it, but I'm making sure that the way they talk to each other works for both of them. Now, if they're deciding to divorce and one person is still reluctant to do it, but the other's decided to proceed, the one thing we know for sure, Marty, is you don't have to stay married to someone anymore, most places. So we figure out a plan that hopefully creates a container where one spouse, especially the reluctant one, isn't stuck in a space of fear. Because fear leads to all the things we know, which is acting not in our best interest, maybe talking to our kids about things we shouldn't. So we're really trying to, again, de-escalate the individuals to provide a safe space for the container. So I will at that point make legal recommendations, financial recommendations, individual therapy recommendations as needed, but we're going to stay together in this coaching container too, to create this intersection and conversations all along the way. Yeah. And again, there's really no difference between what I'm doing for couples coaching and blended family or co-parent coaching, except that it's a different topic, right? It's still a safe container to create more agreement and de-escalation.
Yeah, and I think that's so valuable. And I want to stress something that you talked about, because I hear this all the time as a divorce coach, and I only work with women. But I hear all the time that I want to give this one more chance. I want to try one more thing. Most women take about 18 months going back and forth. Should I stay? Should I go? Before they actually make a decision. And you can't make somebody go to therapy. You can't make somebody love you. You can't make somebody change their basic personality. If we could, we would all wave that magic wand and we would all be married to Mr. and Mrs. Right every single time. But we can't do that. And I think that is the hardest thing. I don't know about you, but for me, is to work with people who want to stay in a relationship when the other partner is just as committed to getting the hell out of the relationship. Like, that's a no-win situation for that person that wants to stay married, because it's not going to happen.
Marty, that is such an important point to make. And I also just happened to talk to a client today who has a partner that was told by their couples therapist, he will not change ever. And she still says, but I'm not sure I can leave. So it's an interesting point. This obviously is more psychological than practical, right? We can know something intellectually and still she says, but I want it to work. So our work is digging in. And in this case, I'm not working with her spouse, digging into what's going on for her. What's that for her that's this source of fear? And then we work on those issues and challenges. But you're so right. We cannot, nor should we. And I keep telling her, by the way, my professional experience suggests the other side of this decision is where her joy and contentment lies.
Right. Yes, because you're so right. And as coaches, we don't do the therapy side. So whatever attachment disorder or whatever codependency, and I'm not diagnosing this woman. I've never met her. I don't know. But that's the nice thing about coaching, because that doesn't necessarily impact us. What we're looking at is, what are you experiencing now? And what needs to change so that you can move forward from this place? Because you're right. There's a lot of fear. I mean, there's fear when you leave a relationship. What are people going to say? What are, my kids going to say? How am I going to support myself? Will I have enough money? Can I still retire when I thought I could? Like, there's a lot of legitimate reasons why this is a scary time of life to move through this.
And what I'm doing with this client and do with other clients is, let's not do the global fear thing and think of the overwhelm when we think, where am I going to live? How will my kids be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and we get her the support she needs to know that in each category of decision-making, she will be okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean those moments of fear don't arise, but then I have a few tips and tools to apply that really are around mindfulness, how we get out of that state of overwhelm and chaos to take care of ourselves.
Right, right. And that's so important. I saw a funny thing on Facebook the other day. It was like, I've got 99 problems and 87 of them are totally made up and will never possibly ever happen. But that's what our fear is, right? That these things, like, we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to be out on the street. We won't be able to retire ever. We'll have to keep working. Like, those are unrealistic fears for most people. But they cause us money in the divorce because we freak out about, well, we've got $5 million to split up in our estate or whatever it is. And if I get $1 less than what I think I need, that's it. I'm toast. Like, we get that kind of mental thing going on.
We do. And then what happens is we end up spending more resources to preserve $1 than it's worth. And so by de-escalating that fear, we can recognize what we can control. Only ourselves, our thoughts, what we do. And what else can we control? Nothing, Mardi, as you know. So we really, and it doesn't mean that we don't plan, we do, but we recognize that we will not be reactive, I hope, to whatever our spouse decides, but rather responsive. And that's kind of the journey of this whole program that I do.
Right. And I know that you really specialize in co-parenting. So can I ask a little bit of a technical question, I guess? Depending on where you are and what country you're in, there's typically some kind of a professional that's appointed by the court, whether it's called a co-parenting facilitator or a co-parenting advisor, or so co-parenting coaching, though, is typically not that. Am I correct? And could you talk about the difference and how you get a co-parenting coach besides how you get a court-appointed person that's going to manage your affairs for you?
I'm really glad you brought this up, Mardi, because I like to provide clarification. I have a credential as a parenting coordinator. What does that mean? It just means I've had education about it. I don't work within the court system very specifically. I don't find, and I understand people end up there, in most cases, it's the most useful construct. I am not the best person to make decisions for your children. You are, and we're going to teach you how to do that. In essence, that's what my co-parent coaching is. It's giving you tools and a framework. So although I might love to keep you in my pipeline forever, that's not my goal. It's really to have you make decisions and have tips and tools for doing it. It's like any other skill, Mardi, as you well know. We learn and generally we're all doing the best we can with the tools that we have. So if I have the tools to know that I don't immediately respond to an escalated text, even though it's really hard not to do so, it can de-escalate the whole system. So there are ways I work with people, either individuals or couple, on the co-parenting stuff that helps them not live in relation to their co-parent, but hopefully over time cooperate to take care of the kids in the system.
Yeah, and I love that. And I also did the co-parenting training, the facilitator and coordinator. And then it got, what I found, and I did several cases, and what I found is that because the parents were aware that I had some reporting capacity back to the courts, they were super collaborative and working together in the office. And then I'd see them out in the parking lot, and I didn't even have to, I could see they were yelling at each other in the parking lot after leaving the meeting. And so that kind of, I got a little disillusioned with that. Although there are people that do it excellently, and it just wasn't something I felt was really effective for me to do as a professional. So yeah, yes. It's interesting. Now, you said something that's really, I think, fascinating about co-parenting coaching, because this is not possible with co-parenting coordination or facilitation or whatever they call it in your area. Just one person can go to co-parenting coaching, whereas with the court-ordered stuff, the court orders you. Both people have to come, and both people have to pay for as long as the court says they're supposed to be in that service. With co-parenting coaching, it's a whole different ballgame. Can you explain how that may work if you're with a co-parent who just wants to disengage from all of this stuff?
Yes, and it's a challenge, Mardi. It's a challenge for the co-parent who doesn't want to disengage, But sometimes this dynamic is built, you will not be surprised to hear, by an overeager co-parent potentially overreaching with a reluctant co-parent. So we all have patterns we build. Often those patterns are built like the dynamic of marriage. So if you happen to be the primary parent to the children in marriage, as many of us are or were, and your co-parent wasn't, they may be overwhelmed by how to co-parent in separation and divorce. And if, as the primary parent, you like to tell them what to do all the time, sometimes a reluctant co-parent says, my only power in this relationship is to do nothing. And honestly, Marty, it's an amazing power. I've never been a person who doesn't do, so it blows my mind, but it's a really powerful skill. Now, is it good for kids? Of course not. We have to find that happy medium, but sometimes the more engaged one overeager co-parent becomes, the less engaged the other person becomes. And it's really just a form, and in my view, as a coach, a power struggle.
Yeah.
So yes, I will work with one co-parent, and oftentimes it will be, you will not be surprised to know, the overeager co-parent. And let me say, I'm not judging that space. I'm an overeager co-parent in some ways, always. And so I name it as we want the best for the kids, but do we always know what's best for the kids? And how importantly do we gain agreement with a reluctant co-parent, or one that didn't feel empowered in the relationship for any reason at all? And we might have to change our thinking and strategy. So I will work literally on emails, right, with that co-parent to try to engage their co-parent. And I have found over time, right, habits are built on practice. So it doesn't happen immediately, but sometimes we get that co-parent engaged and we hear from them, which is really what we want for the children.
Yeah. And I think that overeager co-parent sometimes doesn't realize how imposing they are on the other parent. And I always try to, well, I always want to assume that parents are going to do the best for their kids. So if there's no history of any kind of neglect or abuse, or there's no, drug or alcohol, mental health, or any of those kind of issues, those issues that might make a co-parent not a healthy person for the kids. I like to tell people, look, how would you like it if I came into your house and started telling you what I think you should be feeding the kids? And, I get that. That's a big one for me. I hear this all the time. Well, they don't, they eat pizza and they have ice cream. Well, so feed them some vegetables, extra vegetables when they come back to your house, or all they do is stay up late at night. Well, if it's a weekend, okay, maybe you could talk about reasonable boundaries, but you can't keep imposing your parenting style on somebody else's household, because it's just going to continue with the conflict.
And that's it. You can, and it doesn't work. So what you are doing isn't working. Do you choose to shift that and make an impactful difference or not? And that's an individual choice, right? I do have this expression I learned from a great co-parenting coach, Karen Bennell. I don't want to hear about whether they're eating organic broccoli at mom's or dad's, right? I don't want to hear about that. And to me, that sums up the eating stuff. It's like you cannot control it as long as they're being fed, as you said, short of neglect. It's going to be what it is. And that is one of the prices of divorce. And kids also can learn good skills. They learn to be more flexible and resilient in this space if we allow for it. And that's the key. We're role modeling all the time in the way we co-parent to our kids about the functional adults they can become.
Well, and I think that is such a good point. And thank you for bringing that up, Cherie, that kids are watching what we're doing. They're watching how we handled the divorce. They're watching how we're handling this relationship as co-parents. They're watching how we're handling new partners in our lives and everything. I mean, everything we're doing, our kids are watching that. And whether they're younger or teens or even young adults, that is how they may be assuming that, if they value your role as mom or dad or parent, they're going to say, that's the way, most likely, that's the way they're going to handle these situations. And we know that there's a higher divorce rate for children whose parents have been through a divorce. So if you do it well, you're going to help your kids in so many ways, because they will have a better foundation for these future relationships.
And just to build on that point about divorce, it's not the divorce that hurts kids, our data shows. It's certainly not our first go-to. As you said, if we can preserve the nuclear family, great. If we can't, however, it's a predictor of conflict. So if we continue to stay in the marriage or relationship and have conflict, that's bad for kids. If we get out of the relationship and continue to have conflict, that's bad for kids. So can we create a construct of not complete agreement, but a healthy way to manage conflict? What great role modeling for our kids.
Right, right. And like this is such a positive conversation because if there's one thing that you can do is you can stop reacting to somebody you're not married to. And you know, you teach them skills. I teach people skills. I practice those skills daily. When I get a phone call from a telemarketer at 7 o'clock at night, you know, you're triggered, right? That first reaction is to do or say something. But if you just take a deep breath, put yourself in the other person's shoes, they're just doing their job, and try to have some empathy for other human beings. It's amazing how quickly we can shift that conflict.
I love that you mentioned that we're doing the work that our clients do. I think it's a really important point because sometimes when I talk to a client, they'll say, you don't get it. But in fact, this is really conflict resolution, de-escalation skills. So all of us every single day need to practice that, right? We deal with difficult people, difficult relationships, difficult children sometimes. So how do we respond rather than react? And it is about our work from my perspective, Mardi, which I think is really central to the work I do. I ask everybody to show up and be open to the notion that we all need to shift. So it's not the other, but it's us. And that doesn't make us bad and certainly shouldn't shame us, but there are always ways in which we can do better for ourselves to take better care of our children.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I say, especially when there's children involved, because if there's one thing that I can say universally with the parents that I've worked with, every one of them, and when I mean I do family and divorce mediations, and every one of them comes to the table, and their first thing is we just, you know, we want the best for our kids. And so when parents say that, and then when they get into a conflict, you know, it's easy for me as the mediator in the room to just say, how do you think this behavior is supporting your initial attempt, your initial request that you want this to be in the best interests of your kids? And you know what? That starts people thinking right away. It's just simple little tools like that. And you're right. Practicing with a coach, so helpful. Absolutely.
And what I love about this work too, is you see change over time. So in the course of a year or so that I generally work with clients, sometimes I continue to have quarterly check-ins with co-parents over 2, 3, 5 years. And the shifts you see as the kids get older, as their skill set develops, as perhaps they enter new relationships, sometimes escalating, sometimes not. There are gentle reminders to bring them back. But there is the ability to create a shift. And truly, Mardi, I'm sure your experience with separation and divorce is also that time can heal wounds. So sometimes it's a factor of time, but let's take the time. You're allowed to be in the space of grief, but don't base all your decisions in anger and fear because of it. And I think that's one of the most impactful things we can do as a coach, is to help people see that perspective and to see the other side, even if they're stuck a little bit in their grief and anger.
Right. And you have the right to have your feelings and to take as long as you need to process them. Nobody should tell you how to do this. But one of the things that you have to recognize is when you're in those states is life does go on. Like you can't put things on hold. There will be decisions you have to make. There's going to be challenges. You know, if a child gets hurt, heaven forbid, but a child gets hurt at school, the school calls one parent first, that parent doesn't answer, they call the other parent, they don't know what your arrangement is. And so, you know, sometimes you just have to be flexible. And if you are still in that grief and anger, everything that comes at you becomes a threat. And you have to let that go to be able to move forward. I think that's so important.
And one of the things, if I may just share, I have a tool that I use and that I could share with your podcast listeners to do just that, right? There are lots of mindfulness tools, but really what I ask people to do, it's a form of stop, drop, and roll, which is the old, fire academy rule, right? If you're on fire. But instead, we're going to go slower. We're going to get lower to contain. And what this means is everything around you has to stop in this moment. And it doesn't mean if you're driving, you stop the car or you do an unsafe procedure. But if something escalates you, whatever it is, whether it's co-parenting, your divorce, something else, as much as you can, contain. And that means you're going to slow down your body. You're going to slow down your thoughts. You're going to slow down your breath, perhaps do a body scan to see what's going on. And you really lower even the temperature. If you need to get to a cooler space, they show that can make a difference, right? In our responses to things. And then we contain, and we've created this container where you can think again. So really what you've hit is the pause button. Slower, lower, contain for the goal of calm. And if you can use that simple tool of mindfulness as you are faced with that escalating text, as you are faced with that second call from the school or not getting the first call, it can change the whole dynamic in co-parenting. And in my experience, people find they can support each other more easily. So again, your feelings are very important, but sharing those feelings with your co-parent or former spouse isn't always necessary and can actually work against your goals.
Yeah. Words of wisdom, that I tell you, that's golden right there, what Cherie just shared. And I really like that idea of having everything contained. Get low, get slow, and get contained. I think that's fantastic. So, Cherie, we've covered a ton of things, and I can't believe how fast 20 minutes goes. It's like gone. What do you think of everything you've shared with us and we've talked about? What do you think is the kind of the top of the mind thing that people should think about when they go about their day after listening to this?
I think what I want people to hear is that they have a choice, that it's not up to the other, whether a difficult co-parent, a former spouse, or just another difficult person, to decide how they respond. They get to decide how they respond. They can take a moment to respond, and they can create good tools and habits to do that rather than reacting. So remembering that it's up to us and that it's up to each decision we take in a day. And there are so many that come at us. So if we can remember that, to take that breath, to take that pause, I think it's the very best self we can bring to our co-parenting and, former spouse relationships.
Yeah. And to life in general, right? I mean, coworkers, everybody, if we can honor them that way, boy, would workplaces be a lot nicer to be in.
Isn't that the truth?
Cherie, if people want to find out more about what you do, or maybe want to reach out to you and find out more about the couples coaching or the co-parenting work that you do, what's the best way to do that?
The best way to find all things me, Cherie Morris, is at deardivorcecoach.com. I've also just released an online co-parenting course that's accessible to anyone, that allows you to watch or just to listen, and also offers written worksheets to journal and do other work. And it's really affordable. So it's a great access point for people wanting to take a jumping off into co-parenting. And always you can discover me at Dear Divorce Coach and schedule a discovery Zoom to talk about what's going on for you and figure out if we should work together.
Wonderful. And I'm going to make sure all that information gets in the show notes. So if you're out jogging or walking or driving or whatever, don't worry, just go home, get on your computer, look at the show notes, and you'll find all that information. Cherie, thank you so much for being here today. And thanks for sharing all your wisdom on this.
Thank you, Mardi. And your wisdom is equally terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And hey, everybody, thank you for listening in to this episode of The D Shift. And don't forget to tune in to our upcoming episode. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.